health is not valued till sickness comes. It started off as a normal week, for the most part, aside from the daily visit to the baseball field to play a game or two, maybe even celebrate with something other than ice cream despite Sonic's obvious protests, Knuckles' look of disappointment, and Tails' puppy eyes and the quiet nights in, watching movies and snacking down on popcorn. Nothing much happened in Green Hills. Then Sonic started acting off. With a yawn, the hedgehog sniffled, turned over onto his other side, cracked an eye open, though just barely. Knuckles was already out of the room, having seemed to disappear downstairs, leaving Sonic in the company of Tails. The kit was snuggled into his sleeping bag, drawn tight to him by his paws. He was facing Sonic, his eyes sewn shut, at peace. Shaking his head and readjusting his position beneath the sheets, Sonic let out another sniffle, another, more groggy-sounding yawn escaping him. That seemed to have gotten Tails up, his eyes slowly peeling open and flicking around for a moment, before landing upon the other.
Oh, morning, Sonic!
He gave a bright smile, then upon noticing something seemed different about his brother, frowned, had to practically tackle the sleeping bag off him, strolled over to Sonic's side.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Upon closer inspection, Tails noticed just how red his eyes were, or at least, his sclera, anyway, also known as the whites of people's eyes, according to regular human customs. The past few weeks of adjusting to the human planet named Earth had been difficult at first, but Sonic had been quite the help, except for that one time in Siberia when he'd said that thing about humans, but he was over that by now. A blink, Sonic's eyes completely open now. He was certainly awake, but given the shallow yawiness of his breath, Sonic definitely wasn't okay.
Huh.
The hedgehog attempted to sit up, shaking hands grasping the sheets as he braced himself, hauled himself up. He slouched into the pillow beside him.
Oh, yeah, I'm fine.
His words were slurred as yet a third sniffle escaped him, and he waved a dismissive hand, voice so hoarse, as dry as a desert, and his runny nose certainly didn't help his case.
Sonic, you don't see me.
As carefully as one could, Tails had to tip her in order to reach up high enough to delicately place the back of his hand to Sonic's forehead, burning up. Despite wearing a glove, Tails could feel the poor warmth that Sonic's forehead radiated.
Holy cow, you're burning up. I gotta go, Maddie. Stay right here.
And then he was off, before Sonic even had the chance to say anything to stop him. Why did he suddenly feel so weak? Strange, because last time he checked, he was relatively strong, and instead of his words being so slow, slurred, he'd usually be able to spit out sentences quicker than he was able to run. No, he could let Maddie, his mother, see him like this, or his dad. Oh, gosh, what was Tom going to think? Even though the Wachowskis had to make some room in the attic so that Sonic's new tribe members, or, as he had secretly dubbed them, brothers, could become a part of the ever-expanding clan, Donut Lord and Pretzel Lady still made sure to spend plenty of time with Sonic above all else, to make sure he wouldn't feel jealous, left out, or lonely, especially lonely. They wouldn't want for him to feel so alone, not ever again. He was their son, after all, so when Maddie came racing up into the attic, followed close behind by Tom and Tails, Sonic knew he was in for it. In for it, as in his parents and little brother were going to fret over him for at least a week or so.
Sonic!
The worry in Maddie's voice twisted his heart, and he proceeded to bury himself into the sheets, not wanting for her to see him in such a state.
Come on! Tails has already told us what's wrong with you.
His dad, he could, so much hurt it showing in his words, Guilt, a feeling he was all too familiar with, it gripped tight at his heart and twisted, his voice thick.
I'm fine.
And, silently above him, Tom and Maddie shared a concerned look. It was Sonic had dubbed the parent look, but he couldn't see, of course.
Come on, Sonic!
Tails' voice was but a soft whisper, a gloved hand upon Sonic's frayed shoulder. He relented now, finally pulling back the sheets from off his now sweaty fur sticking to his body, and Maddie let out a gasp, Tom's eyes going wide with panic fear. Oh, gosh, no, not fear. Please, please, please.
Buddy.
Tom took a step forward, kneeled down in front of his son.
You've got to let your mom take a look at you.
Sonic gave a mild hum in return, attempting to blink the haziness out of his vision.
I said I'm fine, Dad.
Tom inhaled a deep breath, let it out as a sigh.
Or if you're not gonna get looked at, then it looks like I'm gonna have to carry you. Don't think you'd be able to walk anyway.
The last part was added as a mutter, and before Sonic had the chance to protest again, for the second time he was already back to being half asleep in his father's arms as he headed down the stairs. Carefully, one at a time, he felt himself slip in and out of consciousness, heard the whispers amongst his parents, so worried, and Tails hovering beside Tom, beside him as he felt his body be placed down onto something soft, the sofa.
Kiddo, I'm gonna need you to open your eyes, okay?
Maddie, this time, but there were spots of black and white blurring his vision, and his breathing was shallow, too shallow. His lungs were hollow and desperate for air. He didn't have the strength to breathe. Open his eyes.
Come on, bed.
Tom's voice, he hated how it sounded so scared.
You've got to, as Mom says, okay?
And with a reluctant grumble, Sonic's emerald irises were still able to pierce into his father's sea blue ones, the crushing waves mounting and becoming more relentless now. Then, a meek smile, a glimmer of hope in his eyes.
There we go.
He muttered, voice inexplicably faint as Tom helped Sonic sit up, a hand gently pressed to his back. He knew how fragile Sonic could be at times, whether it be emotionally or physically, so he knew when and when not to be too raw or too delicate. Now, though, this time was one of the latter times, and times like this were usually difficult, to say the least, whether it be Tom not wanting to see the teen hug in such a state, or whether it be that he couldn't deal with it at the moment, not in a bad way, of course, more so in a too busy kind of way.
I don't think I'll have enough medicine in my kit. Looks like I'll have to go get some more. Think you can make sure he doesn't try doing anything stupid?
To which a half awake, half asleep.
Hey.
Was mumbled in response. Tom nodded at his wife, before she glanced down at Tails and Knuckles.
You guys want to come with me or stay here and watch over your brother?
Brother, even Maddie seemed to know that, despite it only having been a few weeks, that Knuckles and Tails were already Sonic's brothers. He was more than glad to acknowledge that, even in his half-conscious state.
If it's alright, Maddie, we're gonna go with you.
Tails, his voice sounded ever so small, afraid. Sonic felt his heart itchy at the sound of it. He attempted to place himself into the younger's shoes.
I'll be fine, Tails.
Bros raised in surprise at the fact that he decided to speak in such a moment.
Are you?
Tails hesitated, slowly pacing toward Sonic.
Are you sure?
Reaching a trembling hand out, he managed to ruffle the fox head fur.
Of course I'm sure.
Then a suddenly chesty cough erupted from his lungs, and he quickly recoiled his hand back to cover his muzzle, hand balled up into a fist against his mouth.
We should probably get going now.
Maddie chided, softly, getting Tails to turn, and reluctantly head over to the front door with her and Knuckles. Maddie whispered
Love you.
to the pair on the sofa, blowing 2 kisses in their direction, before the door snapped shut after her.
Sorry.
Sonic gave a sniffle, tilting his head up to meet his father's eyes.
The movie I will watch, and I'm not putting speed on again. You had to have watched the movie at least over 100 times by now.
That caused for Sonic to grin, Tom feeling his heart warm at the sight of it, and he handed the hedgehog the remote. Over the next few days, Sonic, slowly but steadily, got better with each passing second, it seemed. He bounced back, as energetic as ever now, impatiently rocking back and forth on the balls of his feet, waiting for his father to drive him to the baseball field for practice, just the 2 of them. They'd often planned days together, Maddie joining in most of the time, but she was working today, so that left Tails and Knuckles in the care of Wade.
And serving up today, Thomas Michael, I make the worst dead jokes in the world, Wachowski, perhaps the most fierce server in Green Hills.
Sonic was all too enthusiastic to tease his father, grinning at the look on his face upon the hedgehog, quickly adding,
After none other than me, his son, of course.
Sonic then leaned back, zipping away from the microphone and swooping up a bat tightly in his grasp.
You're ready, brother.
Tom playfully called across the pitch, yearning for the grin to grow, reaching Sonic's ears now.
Ready as I'll ever be, Donut Lord.
With that, Tom launched the ball as hard as he could, Sonic swinging and whacking it as hard as he could. It whizzed, soared like a falcon, and for a brief moment he was worried he'd accidentally hit it a little too hard, but it landed just before the fence that bordered the field. Tom promptly sprinted in the direction of the ball, taking advantage of his tactic. Sonic decided to take it upon himself and speed his way across the bases. Once, twice.
Cheer.
Sonic laughed at the betrayed scorn in his father's voice, bursting out into a fit of giggles as he was hoisted up into the man's arms, cheeks blazing as the laughs turned into protests that he was too old to be tickled upon Tom's fingers running across Sonic's ribs. And he thought, it was moments like this that felt so right, moments like this that made him feel at home, because he was home.